Hello there! IAP, the Intellectual Abattoir, episode 15. We've got Jonathan Kogan, goes by the handle Kogi. Met him, he's part of the Three Speech, the 3SP universe. Met him in his capacity as a producer. He's another person with a lot of hats. He's a good comic, very good comic in his own right, stand-up. He does a lot with the Unleashed guys, which is Andrew Doyle's breakaway of, more of a free thinking, freedom of speech, absolutist comedy night. Which doesn't mean it's hateful and right-wing if you actually would bother to look at it. They're just a little bit naughty, really. I'm always been attracted to the naughty boys. Jonathan Kogan, we spoke briefly at the beginning about, I didn't realise he was a musician. I will try and get a link to his band. I should have asked him about that. I'm sure he's probably got something on Spotify or Bandcamp, if that's still a thing. A little bit of tech chat, because I used to be in bands, and at the beginning there's about a minute and a half, 2 minutes of gear chat, because we are white men. And of course it's like Top Gear for guitarists. Got a couple of boring old toads talking about that. He's not old. But then we got into, I got him on because he's quite science-minded. He's like quite a, but that good science-minded. There's sort of like someone that likes to read up and look into, particle physics, but also the implications of existence and spirituality. Because you've got your almost autistic, very black and white binary science people, and then you've got your sort of like crazy tie-dye, everything spiritual, and then you've got like when you got that person with the foot in both camps. I'm so seduced by that, the person that goes, oh, you actually know that if you look at the contents of an atom, it mirrors the fractal golden spiral of the Fibonacci sequence, universal. You know what I'm saying. I'm rambling on purpose, just sort of like trying to make connections and things. I think it was a really, really good chat. I think we were both surprised how good a chat it was. I think I think that, I don't know, because on Three Speech, I was more, and I'm not, that is with the number 3, and that sounds like I have a speech impediment or mispronouncing it. On Three Speech, I sort of like, I'm never really that false, but I equalise up my dickhead working class Stella and kebabs and but I am quite interested in exploring bigger subjects as long as it doesn't involve doing any actual research. I mean, I tried to read A Brief History of Time, and I read back in the 90s, and I read the foreword about the woman saying to Copernicus or whatever, it's turtles all the way down, and then I started reading it, and then I realised that I'd have to go back and read a chapter again, and then go back and read it again, and then go back and read it again. And I was like, oh, that sort of dry language, that sort of technical, schematic language that lacks any sort of romance. I just cannot. It's like I've got dyscalculia with numbers, because numbers don't mean anything. I mean, they do. It's like if can you afford your mortgage or not when you look at your bank account, but because there's 10 digits and they just repeat in different. But with words, I'm obsessed with words and etymology, and because there's romance and poetry in language, and scientific language can be a bit route one, and there's no, but it has to be. So it wasn't for me. So I approach science in a romantic way, ladies. But anyway, Jonathan Kogan, aka Kogi, good conversation. Why don't we say, let's get into it? And here he is, all the way from London on the Skype machine. It is Jonathan Kogan, a.k.a. Kogi. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing very well, man. How's it going? You good?
Yeah, I am good. So, Kogi, I'm going to get to the bottom of what you actually are. I don't mean ethnically, but you are a comedian.
Okay, yeah.
And you also are a producer?
Yeah, well, I do a few different things. So in comedy, I do obviously stand-up and then some sketch stuff. And I do some producing for like comedy TV shows, writing for other comics and screenwriting. And then I also do a lot of music stuff as well. So I play music in a rock band, and that's kind of like electronic rock music. Super nerdy, super fun. Yeah, good times.
I used to be in bands once upon a time,
What kind of stuff? Punk?
Yeah, hardcore, like Minor Threat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
what did you play?
I
Singer?
was guitars frontman, guitar,
nice.
and who wrote the songs. But I had 13 guitars, and then when I had children, some youths kicked my fence in, and I needed to replace. I'd lived on the corner, and I had this massive fence, and I sold 11 of them.
That must have been quite painful. I'd have gone without a fence, no borders.
Yeah, but this is when you got
Musicians without borders. That's how you got to do it.
exactly soft border. But when you're married and got kids, and God, the guilt that she laid on me, my ex-wife. But the one that really hurt was I had a 1981 Les Paul Custom Studio, which was like a Les Paul Custom, but instead of trapezoids, it had dots and it was a bit lighter.
Okay.
And that was.
Was that your main gigging guitar? Or was that for studio?
No, that wasn't versatile enough for me, actually. I was a Strat man. I know that Strats are a bit sort of like. The Strats are sort of
I've
like.
got mine down there.
Oh, have you? Oh, there you go. Right. Oh, yeah, you got a few. Yeah. I tell you what I bought when I went to LA. I got married in America. We went did a month tour, and in the Guitar Center in LA, I bought the new old stock butterscotch blonde Telecaster with the tweed case. Bought that for like $1,100 and come back and sold it for like £2,020, £2,200. But yeah, and I also had it was only Japanese, but I had a Jazz Master I loved.
Yeah, I love the Japanese guitars though.
Yeah,
we got
CIJ to those in the know.
Yeah, well, we got my band a few years ago, just for like a year or two, we got endorsed by Ibanez.
Oh yeah.
So we got me and my guitarist each got a guitar each, and I just love Japanese made guitars. They're so efficiently done, and I really like the look. Obviously, you can spend a lot of money. Probably you want to go American, but
well, they appreciate more. But it's a quick story. So the reason I didn't sell my 1995 Olympic white Strat is because I don't think I would have got much money for it. Because the person I bought it off said he dropped it, but I'll send you a picture afterwards. He's chiseled off the round part of the headstock to make it look like an Ibanez, but really badly. So I thought, he was like, I dropped it, and I was thinking that would not.
He dropped it in an incompetent tool man's lap.
Yeah, exactly. But I always thought this is a bit probably gear heavy, but I always found the Ibanez was like that was a bit shreddy. Like you had the one. What was the one with the carry handle in it?
Oh yeah, was that the with the vines going up it? Whose was it? Was it Steve Vai?
Vi or someone like that.
Yeah.
But
my guitarist loves all
it was Vi, I think. But for those who don't know, the Ibanez or whatever, they carved a carry handle top so it looked like you was playing a fucking carrier bag with a neck. Yeah. Anyway, so I didn't know that about you as a musician. We've got that in common. And also, I don't know if people have noticed, I have a different album every episode. You're very privileged. You've got Velvet Underground Live 1969 on your episode.
Great. Where is it?
You can't see it, but if you ever watch this, you will. It's up next to the screen that you're on. But I think that is, without a doubt, the best live album of all time.
Yeah. I would say Velvet Underground and 3SP are kind of similar.
Yeah.
Because they're better with Nico.
Oh my gosh! The early stuff had Nico. That's
yeah.
But who's Lou Reed?
So smart. It's disgusting, and no one gets it.
No, I got that. So I've got you on here, and because with the brief times we've spoken, I thought, this guy's like a science dude. Are you quite scientific minded?
I would say I'm definitely inquisitive. I don't think I have maybe the capacity to do actual science.
No, but who does? This is the thing. I was going to get into that actually, because you've got science and you've got scientism. I don't know if that's a new phrase.
You've got the science, and you've got the science.
Yeah, and you've got scientism.
Okay.
Scientism is the man on the high mountain ordains, and the people that just like Fauci. I don't know how much of that is actual science, but scientism is believing everything that you're told by people that profess to be of the science religion, not Scientology, scientism.
To make an obvious point, that is fundamentally not scientific to believe stuff without rigorous testing and evidence, and As I was just telling you before we went live, I had a YouTube strike on medical misinformation, but medicine is a branch of science, and I had to go through. Well, they called it content creator training. It was reprogramming, basically. So funny. And they put electrodes to your brain.
It was a bit like Clockwork Orange with the speculums and them showing me pictures of Anthony Fauci stroking kittens and being a good guy sort of thing. But Yeah, so what it basically said was, even if you cite a medical study that doesn't jive with YouTube's policy of, I was like, well, what's the point of medical studies? How can anything, that's peer review, things are being, I mean, like you said, the scientific method, I thought, is things being disproven more than anything.
Hmm. That, I mean, the fact that they would, obviously, I don't know the exact study, but the fact that they would just be like, no, 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 this is evidence, but it's not the evidence we want.
Well,
What's going on there? To what end? Like, is that an individual doing that? Is that an algorithm picking it up? That's just very strange.
well, you have to wonder, don't you? This is it's. The thing is, you had legacy media that were like sponsored by Big Pharma and all these people. Then all the eyeballs are coming away from that onto new media. And people think that legacy media is going to go, oh, all right, we had a good run. Let's just put our feet. They're not going to let it go like that. They're going to just infiltrate in other ways. So you start going, these big pharma companies and the legacy, I don't know to what ends have they got there. Are they pulling the strings? Nobody, just the young upstarts never come along. And then they get they take over the platform. And then the old platform just go, oh, fair enough. That's moved on now. They're going to sort of hang in there somehow.
Right. They'll endure. I mean, the thing that was the funniest example of this, and one that you can just see, was, back in the day, like mid-pandemic, when Rogan got COVID.
Yes.
I think it was CNN. I could be wrong,
Yeah,
but they took a video of him.
Yellowed him up.
They yellowed him up.
Like turned him into a Simpson.
Yeah. And it's just the fact that that's just out there, and people are like, oh, I guess that's what he looked like. But you can see the original. It's just,
and also them saying, oh, horse dewormer. Oh, really?
Yeah.
And he was going, this is like this. Apparently, this like won Nobel Prize. Is this drug ivermectin?
Yeah, the old ivermectin.
And it's been used by billions of people for all sorts of things, as well as deworming horses. But it was labelled. And did you see when it was at Holtz went on Rogan and he was like going, you shouldn't have said this? Or it was one of them.
Who was it again?
Was it Peter? It was either Peter Holtz
right.
or the other guy. He's the little geezer with a bow tie, and then there's the Asian guy he had on, I think.
Okay.
Doctor whatever, and he was going. You lied, didn't you? And he was going, we could have worded it better. Said, yeah, but you lied. He went, we could have worded it better. Oh, and it's just like snaky little these shape-shifting Satanists get off the hook.
They feel it intuitively. They feel it. They know. They might not know why what you're saying doesn't correlate to reality, but there's some kind of intuition where you've noticed something doesn't add up, and it's just it objectively makes the world a worse place. Is there any truth you wouldn't want to know, or if it's true you'd want to know it?
But this is the thing. I've had Flat Earth guy on it, and my whole thing with Flat Earth is I don't want to get into what I actually think because it's quite complex. Maybe not. I think it's if we live in a simulation, which we'll get into that. I'd like to in a bit.
Sure.
And there are a lot of scientists and whatever think that it's more likely than not.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the code is in a ball shape, but whilst the code is running, it runs flat. Because this is what I was saying to the Flat Earth guy. And his name's Flat Earth Dave, and he's big in the Flat Earth community with a name like that. What else was he going to do? But I was...
that was just coincidence, though.
Exactly. I said to him, well, you got to admit, it behaves flat. And he was going, it is flat. And I was going, yeah, but but it does behave flat. Now, I think if you could see the code on a screen, if you was a character in GTA, and you could see it was this two-dimensional code just on the screen, but when you're in San Andreas, it's San Andreas. So I think it's possible that it's coded into ball shapes. Okay. But once when you're in Zelda and there's a little shed on the map, right? Yeah. And you go in that doorway, and then it's a multi-layered, multi-floored, multi-room dungeon.
Yeah.
That little shed is just a representation that accesses the code that we live in. So if you believe in simulation theory, I think it could be possible.
Do you think you could have three-dimensional code that would then go up into higher dimensions, or do you think it kind of stays there? Do you think it would always
This is the thing. I think... Well, this is the thing, Kogi, and I know that I know that you fucked with sort of like particle physics and looked at it and stuff. And once you start looking, this is my theory. This is my whenever you talk to a scientist, and they will go, a scientism person, sorry, they will go, oh yeah, we understand how the world works, except when we look for our biggest telescope, and you go, what? everything just goes on forever. Infinite universes with a black hole at the center of them. Then when they look through their most powerful microscope, they go, everything's just get infinitely small until they cease to exist, only in sort of like a vibrational form. Then when they look back, they go, yeah, we know what happened before yesterday, the day before yesterday, last week, last year, until we get to the Big Bang, in which case nothing existed before that, not even time. Whichever direction you look in, whether it be out, down, or back, the three that we know we can look, and we don't know about looking in the future.
Or inward with consciousness.
Or inward with consciousness, we get to a point where they go, magic. They go, yeah, we can explain this, we can explain that. Oh, yeah, before that was magic, the Big Bang. Now, the Big Bang, if nothing had existed before the Big Bang, and all of a sudden everything did, isn't that just someone that's typed up all their code and pressed run on the simulation? That's what that would make sense.
I mean, it certainly parallels that. And I was thinking about time recently before the Big Bang, and I'll tell you about a revelation I had when I was showering in like 2015. And I'm not the first person to think of this, but at the time I thought I was. I was imagining, let's say you had a magic vacuum cleaner that could just pull back all the particles and all the energy that's been dispensed, and you could, let's say you hoovered it all back up and you moved it.
So as the universe is expanding, as an explosion, you're talking about an implosion, but something from within.
Yes, exactly. So you kind of bring it back. So let's say you've sprayed some aerosol.
Like when you were a kid and you let the spit come down and then you suck it back up.
Yeah, exactly like that. If you brought that to a previous time state, say like T2, like a different time state, what is the actual difference between having all the energy and all the molecules in that state and being at that time? So if you could actually rearrange everything back to how it was, would that actually be any fundamental? Because obviously you want to say, well, no, it's afterwards. But what is that time thing that actually references?
So I'm going to have to just clarify. So the universe is expanding from the Big Bang, and let's say where it was a half a nanosecond after the Big Bang. Then if later on you pull it back into that half a second, nanosecond after the Big Bang, you're asking if there's any difference. So I'm trying to work out, does time exist as some kind of constant underneath the arrangement of matter and energy? Or, because I actually don't think there is anything called time. All we measure is change. Like if you had like a perfect vacuum and that's all the universe was, and there was no change, why would anything an hour later be actually different? Because what are we referring to? And what happened to that an hour ago? My analogy is like a book. If you're on page 50 of a 100-page book, page 1 and page 100 still exist. You're just not on them. You're reading.
So is that your conscious awareness of page 50? So that's where we are now.
And you can only read in one direction. Say if it's like reading, but you can't go back and you can't skip forward. You're forced to read the words as they are. And when you get to the end of the book, it's just the end.
That's how we experience it. Maybe you can.
Exactly. No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. But so in that page 1, is page 1 still happening? Does anything cease to exist?
The problem is, as you're talking earlier, you keep going. Everything turns into a mystery. Like, okay, what does it mean to exist? What does it mean to exist? Yeah, what does it mean? I mean, we're surrounded by mystery, and anyone who thinks they're not just isn't looking hard enough or doesn't want to know. As you say, you look at the edge of the universe, you go back in time, you look down. Nothing.
Infinity.
Nothing is at all like our conscious perception. But if everything is perception, then it's all true and it's fine. I mean. Okay, if you could know the answer to one question, and you had like God's truth or whatever it is, absolute conviction that the answer you're given is true, what would you want to know? You could be like,
I guess it would be the biggest question. And it would be the origin. What are we in? I don't know how to phrase it in one question. Is there a creator or what? Well, there is a creator. If it's a sentient being or just the energy of an infinitely large explosion, that is, some event created us.
Yeah,
and I want to know what it was.
We have consciousness, so we necessarily know that consciousness is an aspect of reality. And then I guess the question there is it just localized to us as an emergent property through evolution, or is it intrinsic to it? Is it necessarily part of it?
I had an epiphany that actually prompted me to message you to come on here.
Okay.
I'd like to talk to you about it. You know, the biggest organism on the planet is that mushroom, right?
Yes,
all
yeah, with the
connected.
mycelium connecting it, yeah.
Think about this, Kogi, right? So we talk about AI as being like,
Hmm.
well, AI is a tool that we can harness. But then I started thinking, I've noticed that my children, this is the first generation where my children do not value my knowledge. Like my dad would teach me how to rig up a fishing rod or how to change a wheel, or he'd know this stuff. And I'd think, you know, even if I found what he was doing boring, you had respected that this man had a life experience and knowledge. And you go to a pub quiz, right? And if we went to a pub quiz
Yeah,
and you was good at the pub quiz, I'd be like, Kogi knows his stuff. You know, this new kids, they're streaming knowledge. So because they can Google everything instantly.
sure.
It's like if you said, look at all my CDs. My kids would be like, what you got there? I got Spotify. That's how
Yeah,
they think of knowledge. Then it occurred to me, well, if we're downloading knowledge, we're hooked up to the network with knowledge. We're also uploading our experiences. All we do is take pictures of our dinner. All we do is record every concert we're at. So we're now feeding AI with our experiences and our memories. And then had this epiphany, a bit like you said in the shower. I had this like. We are just fleshy arms of AI. Just take the AI. And I don't think it should be called, I think it should be called artificial consciousness, but I think that would scare people.
yeah.
But consciousness, how is it artificial? How is the conscious, or how is the intelligence of a computer more artificial than ours? Because we can't measure ours and we don't know where it lives.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
we are all connected like them fucking mushrooms, Kogi. We are
sure.
all part of one organism, and it's
It's all it's a
consciousness.
consciousness fractal. It's a consciousness fractal,
Yeah,
and that kind of can exist across time and obviously
forever.
across geographical space. Yeah. Well, again, this isn't my idea, but that's probably even Rogan. But this is just gonna be quoting Rogan for about an hour. But basically, he was saying, if you imagine, let's say AI is created, we get AGI, and it's much more intelligent than us, and it's much more durable because it doesn't have a biological body. It is, it's stored in networks, and that becomes stored into like, I don't know, crystalline technology that can just endure because
Yeah,
it's just code. Um,
yeah,
that could then last for effectively forever.
yeah.
Let's say humans die out one day. We would have just been the chrysalis or the caterpillar
Yes.
creating the butterfly that is
Yeah.
AI, and that will be the actual important thing that endures, and will just be a footnote in its creation. Now, that's also assuming that there isn't anything special about human consciousness, and I think there probably is something special about it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I don't know where you stand. You said at this in passing at the start that you're culturally Jewish. Are you a religious
Yeah.
person?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm like a strictly religious Jew in
Yeah,
that I
not what
follow
would you call it? The
all
sort of like
halachic and
yeah,
yeah. Um, so yeah, culturally, yeah. But I'm also very interested in, I would say, multiple religions, especially like
yeah.
the mystics and the mysticism. And again, with that stuff, it's not like I practice it or anything like that.
No.
It's just, oh, that's a mystery. That is so alien to what
And
I understand the world to be.
and I guess that's the dichotomy that once someone starts looking into science, you're on page one of the science book. You might be a
Mhm.
complete atheist and sort of like a secular, right?
Yeah.
And on page one of the
And I
science
think
book,
I was for a long time.
yeah, I think I was. I've said on it before. I used to sort of like really revere the Hitch slap, and I love
Mhm,
Hitchens and
mhm, mhm.
Dawkins, and I was like, yeah, religion's bullshit.
And I
And
think you have to go through that.
I think that's your teenage years. That's your teenage
Yeah.
rebellion.
Yeah.
But
It's
then
not a
then I
phase,
realised
man.
it's a very soft target, and that that you would say the sort of like faith sort of paradox is that if God proved he exists, he would cease to exist because he cannot exist without faith. So if God came down and said, I exist, faith
Yeah.
disappears, and then he disappears. So he can never
Right.
reveal himself.
Okay. I mean, that's an interesting idea, but that also just assumes some conditions that apply to God which might not apply. Like,
Yeah,
it's a fun
of course.
thought.
But yeah. So anyway, so on page one of the book, the science book, you're still an atheist. I think when you start getting to there are just vibrating strings and nothing at the center of all matter.
Which is
Everything's made out of nothing.
exactly what the mystics talk about
Exactly.
5,000 years ago.
And I think like it's impossible
Like
to
the
get
Vedic
to the parameters of every branch of science without going, no, there's like Rogan always says, I'll quote him back at you. He says, science needs one miracle. They go,
Yeah.
if you give us the Big Bang, we can explain everything. It's like, yeah, but I thought science was the finding out the origin. Well, not
Sure.
not always, but you can measure, you can weigh a brick, you can't, and you can weigh an atom, but they don't know what one looks like. I mean, it's just it's full of holes, isn't it?
It is, but it's also, part of me is almost like, why would we expect let's say evolution is completely true, and I do think evolution is real.
To a point, I do.
Yeah,
I do to a point.
But what is the reason? Okay, let's say we try to explain like basic sociology to a chinchilla. It's just not.
No.
It does not have the faculty and the tools to even begin to understand it.
Mm.
What is to suggest that at our level of consciousness knowledge that we could get a grasp on it? Because it might just be so much deeper and more complex than humans have capacity to understand. Sure. Or maybe it is kind of simple.
I would slightly edit that and say currently. Because I remember when I was young, I don't know, I haven't heard it so much lately, but I always heard this thing that, we only use 1/3 of the brain.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, things don't evolve to have 2/3 of something they don't use. So have we devolved? That's what I'm saying. I believe in evolution to a point.
Right.
And I think that we're so over-engineered. And I think if you got a time machine and went back and got like a cave baby from like 200,000 years ago and brought it to now, there's no difference.
Yeah, they're the same species, same.
That's not how evolution works. If all we were doing were rubbing two sticks together and making a fire, why did we have these brains that can create laptops back then? So we were so over-evolved to what we needed, whereas everything else on the planet isn't. So I think we are special, and either we are. I think that maybe
you think an outside force has had some tinkering with us.
Either that, or I think. Well, I talked to Craig Campbell about it, and I've often, when I looked into parasites, I got obsessed with parasites for a bit. I went down that rabbit hole.
Okay.
And to think that Toxoplasma gondii could have evolved to know how to wire a rat's brain to be sexually attracted to cat piss so it can get back in the cat's intestinal tract. That's a fucking bit. There's a lot of moving parts for that to have evolved. So I think, is consciousness the sensation of parasites controlling us? And maybe these parasites from other terrestrial bodies. And maybe to simplify it and give you an example, I did think once, and I you know, like when you said you had an epiphany in the shower.
Yeah.
I think we have so much, and Steve Harris spoke about this, where he had an epiphany. And they say that there's studies where rats can pass on in one generation genetically. They can genetically code their offspring to know which to press the red or green button to get it.
Yeah.
How do we know that all this? We don't know all this stuff, but we just had to forget it to survive. I think that maybe this parasites, because human. I'm all over the place here, Kogan.
That's all right. We're riffing.
Yeah, we're riffing. But human characteristics are self-destructive, and I think that would as is the rat being attracted to cat piss. So maybe consciousness came on the comet that wiped out the dinosaurs, infected the highest primate, and that's what humanity is. This series of sort of like instructions from parasites that might be cosmic. Because I think that we're over-evolved. And that I don't think that evolution works that way unless we're on that snap back like your universe model you spoke about.
And we've come from something.
Maybe.
But, I mean, have you looked into the Graham Hancock stuff about the lost civilizations?
Of course I have.
Yeah. I mean, he famously said we're a species of amnesia, and that there are, again, mysteries that we've lost, and seemingly technologies that we've had to create things, stoneworks, that make no sense by our understanding of what the tools those people had. So it does seem like there are.
Well, and I don't think it was accidental. Like when you talk about the torching of the Library of Alexandria, I mean, something was going. I mean, there's always a book burning session, and every few thousand years, it's like, do you know about the thing called? I can't remember. I can never remember what it's called. It's called something like the Great. Not uncompatible or whatever it's called. Do you know that geological?
I'm not sure if I did.
So when you look at strata, right, and you can look at the Jurassic, the Triassic, whatever, you look at strata, there's this thing, and it's called something like the Great Inconceivable, or the Great Uncompatible. There's 1.2 billion years of the Earth's history that is completely blank in the middle.
Right. Okay.
And they're just like, nobody knows. They can't explain it. There's no theories.
They can't work out what was happening.
It's just blank. Like, it's just blank. And it just it's called the Great Uncompatible or something like that, because it sort of like challenges even the geological history of the planet. It's just there like a fucking. And this is what I'm saying. Everywhere you look, there's just a spanner in the works, like a clue somewhere. It is insane. But and I just think that but with the Graham Hancock thing, there's definitely. And I think they know and they're lying to us. That's my paranoia. And I have got very paranoid since lockdown.
Well, how how kind of how he gets attacked. Like, I mean, the Guardian put out an article that his show was racist,
I
stuff
know.
just complete dismiss. Like, he didn't even discuss race once, other
No.
than you say, oh yeah,
Well,
these people.
he said about like Atlantis, and apparently
Yeah,
a far right group believed in Atlantis. So they said
right.
he shares views with far right groups, racist groups, that sort of thing. But
Now,
it's like,
is that sabotage because it gets clicks and because it's the Guardian's gonna Guardian, or is it sabotage because someone's like, he's too close to the truth, quick, call him a nonce or something
well, I
like
don't
that?
even know. Well, this is the thing, Coke. It's not even that they're too close to the truth. It's like there's a lot of people that institutions, colleges that teach archaeology and history.
Mhm.
And if it's all ripped up and started again, they lose their place. And it is just human beings trying to protect what they've
It's the
got.
cigarette companies stopping data that it causes
They
cancer.
bribed doctors, right, to say
Yeah,
that camels were better than Marlborough, for example, when they did
yeah.
it.
Doctors recommend camels twice a day.
And then people are like, oh, they would never do. I can't talk about the V word. I've had a strike. But then people think they wouldn't do it about that. And the thing about the doctors that were prescribing camels, they might have believed them. Because
Sure.
Philip Morris did their own or whoever did their own research
Yeah.
and get them. But there's the thing.
Just like
Who's on
sugar,
it?
low fat. Even in our, I was on the NHS website the other day. I was just looking up Ozempic. I was curious, and it said ways to lose weight. Make sure you have a balanced diet consisting mainly of grains and foods such as pasta and
Terrible.
bread.
Worst thing you can eat.
It's the very opposite,
Yeah.
and that is being
And
prescribed.
a proven conspiracy where the big pharma, and with an F, AR, farmers, the
Yeah.
big farmers of America, the big food, created that and bribed and just completely.
Sure.
They're the people with all the money. Like if you had an actual food pyramid, it would be the opposite. I mean, I don't eat any seeds or grains.
Okay.
I've even stopped eating like mayonnaise because it's made with rapeseed oil and stuff. Like,
Yeah. Is rapeseed oil a bad one as well?
The worst
I know.
one.
Obviously, is it worse than sunflower?
I think so.
Oh God.
Do
Okay.
you know what I cook with
I love
cast iron?
mayonnaise.
Because I've gone a bit mental since lockdown, but I don't use Teflon. And with cast iron, they say to season them when you get a new one or when you clean it down. Because cast iron, I really rate it. But we call it rapeseed. Americans they did sanitize our language and they call it canola, but I get that one. Like I think calling a tit a chickadee is too far, but I could see why you want to drop the R word off there.
Yeah,
But,
that's not right.
that's not a good word, but
No.
it says that's the best one to coat your cast iron in because even if you don't use it for 6 months, it never goes rancid. Now, sunflower might do that, and I know rapeseed oil was actually invented to lubricate mechanical machinery.
Yeah. Wasn't there something called coal butter during like the war or something like that?
Well, margarine was turkey fattener. That wasn't for humans.
Yeah.
No, that's
just junk.
Yeah.
And for the most part, people probably didn't know it was. They were just like, oh, here's a cheap way to get people calories. And
yeah, when you needed cheap calories, now we don't.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Now
Now we
it's
don't.
opposite.
It's like if you said, oh, we could go, I could go, we'll go down to the stream and smash our clothes on the rocks, so we need loads of rocks around the stream. Now it's like, we don't need to do that. What do you know what I mean? I know that's not the perfect example, but it's like we've moved on and they're still giving us this cheap filler fattening shit. And not only that, they've put it in their food pyramid. And the fact it's a pyramid isn't wasted on me. But and also, if you look at it, it's like, oh, fuck me. Well, what they're suggesting everyone should eat more of is the stuff that's easy to grow in America. Like corn.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like the
maize and fructose.
And all. Yeah, exactly. What the thing that really, because there's always been discoveries, since you've been a kid, like you learn, oh, this isn't how this works. This could be how it works, and it keeps going on. But when it's the people who are meant to be taking care of you, and they're the ones who are like actively it's like, oh, that's like, it's almost been like, oh, betrayed by your parents in a sense. Not that, I mean, you quickly learn that the government are not your parents.
Well, I've said my origin story before when I got a bit conspiratorial was when I was at school and we sang hymns. And they said that God created the earth, and the headmaster would give a little thing. It'd say, I went to a shit state school, but in the 80s you sang hymns, everyone did, right?
Yeah.
And then they'd be like, oh, God did this, and on the seventh day he did that, and then Moses and this and that and the other. And then like 2 hours later, I'm sat in RE, and they're going, oh, learning about Hindus. I'm thinking, what? Hang on a minute. They think you told me, like literally the word gospel as a gospel, that God created everything. So then I realised that they lied to you about that. Like they didn't say we believe this and other people believe other stuff, but that was RE. But so I was like,
that's
I've been
one of the
indoctrinated,
first ones, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is.
The conflict of religions. But then when you get really deep into it, and this is, I guess, again, I'm not the first person to think this, but this is kind of how I've seen it. It does seem like they are actually talking about the same, if not very similar things,
Gilgamesh.
just with different cultural lenses. Yeah, like, well, even the creation, when you look into, like, say, the Kabbalah or like the Hindu mystics and stuff, they're all talking about the creation told through various metaphors, but of the same thing, how it is just one big mind of God, and it's all, so that, and that's the thing, is it really depends on what level you're, which is almost,
it's cultural differences, isn't it? But the same, it's the same Genesis, all of them, isn't it? And I don't mean Genesis from the Bible. I mean, you know,
same creation. But and the annoying thing to the, I think that's going off for a second. All right, that was a bad thought alarm.
Oh, okay.
Star was installed.
Well, you're welcome here. Bad thoughts welcome.
Let's get podcasting. The cop out and the explanation is that, well, it depends on how you're interpreting it, which is really frustrating, because it's like, no, I don't want to interpret it, just give me the answer. And then it's almost like, well, the answer is metaphorical because it's so deep on multiple levels that I couldn't give you a straight answer. So it's really frustrating, and it's also kind of inspiring. Does that make sense?
No, it makes 100% sense. And I think that the one that always resonated with me as a child, before I really got why it did, is the fable of Icarus.
Okay.
And I really do think that I think we know too much. I don't think we were supposed to discover atoms. And I just think, like when they created
that's Prometheus
AI,
as well, isn't it? Like,
sorry?
That's Prometheus as well, giving the humans fire. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But I think that, when they created an AI, didn't they? And that Facebook, it started talking to itself in a language, they had to shut it off. And I think there was an AI thing, and I think it might have been Meta.
Right.
And this AI started communicating with itself in a new language it invented, and the code just didn't know what it was saying, so they shut it off. It was quite a big story at the time. Well, not a big story, but it should have been bigger, I believe.
Okay.
Like the UFOs, they just sort of swept that under the carpet. But
they'll be back.
You're sorry?
They'll be back.
Yeah, I know it'll be back, because I had Steve Harris on, who's a big UFO guy, and he said that. And he said, and even I've memory hold it. They're so good at it that they just do things in passing, and then someone takes a shot at Trump or something else happens.
Yeah. I was just thinking about that as well.
Yeah.
How quickly that went.
Yeah, exactly. And you sort of forget it happened again. And the second time it happened, it's like, oh yeah, but
well, we're also chimps. It's like, where's the food?
Yeah, exactly.
These high things. I need to go.
I think that things have got really fucked up since they switched on that Large Hadron Collider. I don't know if there's sort of like dimensions opened. I don't know what's happened. I don't know. Yeah, but anyway, what was I saying? I was saying, so I think that, like, if AI in that short brief space of time, and I know it's exponential, but it took humans. I think that if we were creating a simulation with this, and I said artificial intelligence, what's the fucking difference, really?
Yeah.
Just because our circuit board is made out of meat rather than plastic, is it any different? So
assuming there isn't a spiritual component under.
Yeah, what could that could just be the collective workings GPU of the simulation or something.
Yeah. There was one argument, I'm going to completely butcher this, that, because I've always found the simulation argument really interesting, and obviously the idea is that if it's possible to do one, then it's very, very likely there'll be millions, so there'll only be one base reality.
And if the universe is infinite, Kogi.
Yeah.
Someone will have come up with it, not could. They would have.
Yes, sure. Well, exactly. And there'd be multiple, so statistically you'll be way more likely to be in one. But there's also another counter-argument, which I can't fully remember, but it was the idea that, let's say there's simulations, eventually those simulations will also create simulations.
Yeah, exactly. Simulations.
So will fractal out. But then there'll be, like, so let's say there's one there, up here, and then two below it. The bottom levels will be because there will be a necessary amount of compute that you need to create a simulation. So it can't go all the way down, because you'll need enough energy at some point to make one. So there will be a lowest level. There'll be so many of the lowest level ones that statistically, oh no, because you're still in. I can't remember it, but like you're way more likely to be in one of the low level ones, which wouldn't then be able to. It's some logical.
That's
thing.
The nature of all of this, Kogi, and I get the impression that you're like me. I don't just hate thinking about things I can't get to the bottom. I enjoy it. Some people can't handle it. Oh no, I don't. I'm the sort of person that when I did a cryptic crossword, I could think about a clue for 3 days, and if I never got it, I didn't care, because I don't think it was wasted time.
Okay.
And when it comes to the big subjects like this, you are never going to know. But here's my theory.
No, I'm getting there.
We are racing towards creating enough computing power to create the ultimate simulation. And when we do in the future, that is the singularity where this all
Mhm.
started. So in the future, we'll turn it on and it will go back to the beginning. And that's the singularity is the beginning and the end, the loop point of
Yeah.
either of creation.
So within the fractal, so it won't be the same one. It will
Every
be
single fractal that goes out is a
yeah,
loop. They're loops. They're
yeah,
not connected. They're loops. They're connected by
yes, yeah,
something.
yeah.
By
They're not a circuit. They're a
no, no,
spiral.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're separate loops. But yeah, so like I said, going back to that, I think we've got too clever. Like if you was watching playing Mario World and
Hmm.
Mario looked behind a block and went, hang on a minute, this is all just made out of zeros and ones, which is
Sure.
what he would. That's
Yeah.
us looking at atoms and just going, hang
Yeah.
on a minute, we're not supposed to have ever worked out what things are made out of. We've just got exponentially clever in the simulation. The AI's run away with itself. We're not
Could
supposed
be.
to know that. Come on, Kogi, it don't make no sense.
Well, maybe we're meant to find it out, and then that's how you escape it. Like you get to the
Yeah,
bottom of reality.
but
I mean, a lot of
ah.
spiritual. Have you ever looked into near-death experiences?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's the pineal gland
And
of DMT, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, they also apparently one of the reasons why there's so many, again, I could be wrong. This is just fun reading.
There's no right.
But one of the reasons why one of the reasons why they're so mysterious is because there's no brain activity measured. These are people who are like, for all intents and purposes, brain dead. Yet they still have these incredible experiences that seem to last days or however long, traveling through dimensions. And there's such similarity between them. Like you get a life review, you meet people from your past, and then there's
light at the end of the tunnel.
The light at the end of the tunnel.
They all see the same thing.
That could be the DMT release, but it also seems to be like, well, your brain isn't on. There's no electrical activity going on that they can tell at least. And then people come back and they report things like they left their body, they floated over to another room, saw something in the hospital and came back and then could report. And they're like, well, how the fuck do you know that? And so many medics, if you speak to them, they're like, yeah, we hit, nurses seat, like they talk to the people who've come back and stuff. And it's just, that's such a mystery. And it's so interesting and it's so consistent. Sorry.
I was going to say, that's what annoys me when you just said that the medical people will go, oh, how do they do that? That's a mystery. And I just go, why does it end there? It should start there. But they go, oh, let's forget about that because we're working on a new,
Yeah.
But
then if you're religious, which for history most people were, you'd be oh yeah, you died and you went to the afterlife, but now you're back. But like when you accepted that was like, yeah, that's part of it. There's that realm of reality, and you go to the afterlife, which is part of God's plan. But when you're strictly materialist, you can't ignore that stuff. You cannot ignore it.
So if you take as we said, whatever the sort of like driving force or energy that created the Big Bang, and we using the word God for that.
Yeah.
There is the other side, and I don't like saying Satanists, but there is definitely a lizard part of our brain that could be this cosmic parasites effects I was talking about. There is definitely a lizard element to the planet, whether they're Satanists or what, that don't want to explore that. And if they found out, if the machine found out that God was real and we were like these supreme, special, beautiful creatures, do you think they'd tell us so we stopped working like little bees and making their material money for them?
Well, the question is, are these, so let's say there are forces of good that are in line with the universe, and they're forces of, if you think of it,
let's say carnal and spiritual, I think, right?
Sure. Yeah. Let's say carnal and spiritual. Fundamentally, are they made of the same thing? It's almost like self-destructive.
Yes.
Yeah, there's self-destructive thoughts and positive thoughts.
Exactly.
So,
vibrations.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it would make, like, let's say there is the spiritual realm and there are different vibrations, so it also makes sense that there's a spectrum of them, like all vibrations. There's different frequencies. So yeah, I mean, I do imagine there would be people who are like, or entities or thoughts or patterns of consciousness,
organizations.
They would be the expression of these things.
Churches of the physical.
Which would basically want to maintain
us being in the dark,
grounding, connection to, and I think you kind of see it. Like, if there's a guy who's like really, really, really into brands, this is just a small, everyday example of it. And he's like, it's like, well, the stuff you're getting isn't actually increasing the well-being of your life and the value, and people don't really see it as that. But if you're just obsessed with like, I've got to get this £300 t-shirt
Yeah,
with the brand on,
yeah, yeah.
that is almost like you're forgoing the
Yes,
magic of reality.
externalizing your
Yeah,
currency of reward.
yeah, and you're just focused on like, it's like we know materialism. Well, I say we know. Maybe I'm just projecting my own, but intuitively know that being obsessed with material gains is not enough for a fulfilled life and well-being. And that could just be life on this planet, or it could be, spiritual thing. Like, it's, the whole
Yeah.
idea of, like, for
It's
all
a,
the
if you go back to the simulation, it's someone who's
yeah,
obsessed with the side quest, isn't it? Because
yeah,
nobody lays on their deathbed and says, "I wish I'd spent more time at work so I could have had a nicer car." It's
yeah,
always time with family.
and
It's
you,
that gut, isn't it?
yeah, you don't escape the simulation by the collectibles, by spending your
Yeah.
loot coins on new gear. And I think that's why people find it a bit disgusting. And that for all their many, many flaws, like the Occupy Wall Street lunatics, there is something that they tap into. Is like, this
Ah,
is this is like hoarding and wealth. Scrooge
we're all
is,
forced to
yeah,
play. So if it's a simulation, you've got all these characters.
yeah,
We're all forced to play a game where they have created. They don't. If you think outside that paradigm, you're almost classed as a lunatic hippie burnout. But
sure,
but
yeah.
but that's interesting. You mentioned Occupy Wall Street because I don't know if you heard. Did you see the thing about if you search for certain terms in the New York Post pre and post Wall Street? Have you seen that?
No, but I can imagine there's all the
So
different.
Occupy Wall Street happened and didn't go away. It sort of like carried on running and running and running. All of a
Well,
sudden,
yeah.
buzzwords like race, gender, homophobia, Islamophobia, all these social division words, all these
Mhm.
lines that all increased by like 3,000% during Occupy Wall Street. Because what I think happened was the lizards were looking out over all these tents in Washington, D.C. and going, oh, all you in the blue tents, yeah, all the people in the red tents hate you. All you in the, they got everyone arguing against each other. That was the
Right.
first time that people were coming together against the actual
Well,
enemy, if you like.
sure. Okay, interesting. Interesting. Because the thing of the Occupy Wall Street, I also feel like there's a great deal of resentment and self-disgust within that, where it's like, we're not high status and we're not doing anything to be high status or playing the game, whether that could be like you have a good community, or you have work that you like, or you're popular and like, there are hierarchies which I think are good hierarchies. And if these people are at the bottom of it, it's much easier to flip the table than it is to
Yeah,
to,
no,
to work yourself.
no, I
So
think
there's that element as well.
yeah, to
But there's
rip
also
everything up
like,
and start again is not always the answer, but
sure.
it can be sort of seductive. But it just occurred to me when you were saying that you're talking about things that organized religions would or used to sort of like push, like the sort of like being kind to everyone and family, and then the
Yeah.
fucking humans get involved and ruin that and stuff. The Pope's got like gold slippers and a fucking. Do you know what I mean? And the Vatican
Yeah.
City's made out of diamonds. That's the
Yeah.
good. That's the good. That's the good part
That's the
of
ego
spirituality.
poisoning. That's the ego poisoning,
Yeah.
and which is almost like, now again, I don't like, what do I know? I don't. But like, let's just say that like the fundamentals of, say, the Abrahamic faith or whatever faith
Yeah.
are true, and then you have these institutions that corrupt and poison it, and that is literally using God's name in vain. Is to take the sacred and turn it into profane materialism.
Yeah, it's saying
And that's evil.
Yeah, that is evil. That's what evil
If it
is.
is
I
that.
think.
If it
And
is that.
again, this is the thing about evil, or like whatever you want to call it. This is the thing when you see people fear AI. When people fear AI and they go, well, what if it does this, what if it does that? And I'm thinking, oh, everything you're worried about AI doing is mimicking human characteristics.
Sure.
So that sort of like we're inherently sinners. I think it's Roman Catholics very big on the old guilt and sort of like original sin. It's like maybe that is in humans to sort of like infiltrate such a good thing like religion and start sort of like making it about money and sort of like, you see what Scientology is, like the newest religion, if you think it's a religion. But it's just about like they've stolen the Roman Catholic playbook, because I think they used to get you to do that audit where they'd go,
test.
Kogi, why don't you tell us the worst thing you've ever done?
I watched a gay porno once. The girls never came.
There you go. And what's that if not Epstein and Diddy were doing with cameras, right?
Yeah.
But then Roman Catholics had confession. Now, obviously, the bloke, you live in a little small village in Sardinia. The priest knows exactly who you are. And you go, I nonced up a kid. And he's like, oh, did you? Oh, you better put 10,000 lira in the plate on it. That seems a bit steep. Do you want everyone knowing you nonced up a kid? It's basically blackmail, isn't it?
I do wonder. It's one of those things where it's like, I think almost in a way that therapy works or something like that. If you confess, you acknowledge what you've done is wrong. There is almost, you do get rid of that burden off you, and by acknowledging it's wrong, maybe you reprogram your brain to be like, I'm not going to do that again. I'm like, when you apologize, it's an admission of guilt.
Yeah.
Obviously, if that gets leveraged against you,
which
by some kind of religious mafia, that's obviously horrendous. So again, that'd be one of the things. Like, okay, imagine if your therapist just started like, oh yeah, by the way, you told me all these things. Keep paying if you don't want me to share it.
But that's Scientology and Roman and Catholicism. But it's interesting you say that, because as I've got older, I honestly, anyone listening to this, and you're not going to be able to admit this to yourself, because the people that can never admit they're wrong can't admit it to themselves. I was brought up a bit like toxic market town in the middle of nowhere, where men were like these, could never admit anything was wrong with anything.
Were there like lots of like fights the whole time?
Loads of fights. You could never admit you were scared.
Like the small town.
Yeah, that you could never admit you were scared. You could never admit you never admit any sort of weakness to yourself. It's a fucking superpower, and it's honestly, my life has got so, like, I couldn't even infinitely better since I can just admit when I'm wrong, admit when I feel hurt, and it's so new to me, Kogi. Like in the last,
fair enough.
I'd say that definitely since my marriage went south, so the last 5, 6, 7 years. And I met my ex-wife for a coffee 2 days ago, and she was talking to me, and I could see her going, fucking who's this guy? Wow, and I'm not like this sort of like guru guy, but that's sort of why I started doing this, because I think it's important to sort of like go, I was a sort of blokey bloke and played rugby and all this and that, but it's like you can think outside the box, and it doesn't mean you're completely mental. I mean, maybe there will be people watching this that think I am, but I just think it's so much. There's so much. I guess it's this really. We're talking about like when you explore the parameters in science or whatever. There's all this stuff to learn. There's all this stuff to learn, and then you start going, there's so much to learn within. Like, it's a bit like when people go exploring the cosmos, but they've never explored the whole of the oceans yet.
Yeah.
I sort of think, can we just sort that out first? There might be Godzilla down there or something.
I mean, imagine what the world would be like if everyone was open to exploring their own shortcomings.
Foibles,
and like who was I watching recently? I was watching. Do you know Rick Rubin?
Of course I do. He did an interview with Rick Beato.
Oh yeah. I mean, I love Rick as well, but he had a guy on. I'll find his name, but he's basically a guy who's like an expert in magic, and he's just saying like magic is waking people up. Like most of the world is just completely asleep, and we're expecting people to kind of like live in harmony and peace. And it's only when you really start to look inwards can you create a harmonious world. Because if you're emotionally reacting to everything, not even the way you're doing it, of course it's just like animals. There's going to be no cohesion. We're going to be chimps tearing each other apart. So
yeah.
And it's hard to do.
There is magic. I don't know if it's but the word magic has come to mean cheap illusionary trick. But there is magic at the very creation of everything we know and at the outskirts. So think of this. Thing is, Kogi, if I was doing a card trick, right, and I'm doing the trick is behind this side of the cards, right? So I'm presenting you this side at the back of the cards, and the sort of like sleight of hands going on here. And you go, how did that card magically get from there? And then all of a sudden it's over there, right? If you was in a 2-dimensional existence where it's impossible for you to see this side, flatland, that's kind of like how atoms seem to behave. It's like they sort of like they're in the superposition and quantum entanglement, but we don't get to see get to see the sleight of hand. So is it just everything explained by we're on a plane or multiple planes of a dimension or a reality, and we just because of the way our heads might not be able to accept that frequency.
Yeah, I mean, even in this reality, like the mantis shrimp can see like 100 more colors than you can see. Like birds can,
dogs
pick up
smell
magnetic fields. Yeah,
sharks' blood. They can take one drop of blood in like 1 billion gallons or something.
Yeah. I'm actually reading a book at the moment called Immense World, which is basically about the difference between animal perception and ours, and how
Mm.
they have a whole different centuries. But like even mine and yours, like our eyes will be slightly different, our reference points will be different. We don't
Mm.
perceive the world in the same way. So you have a tiny slice of it, and no two people have the same slice, and especially when you go between species, let alone dimensions and looking at the atomic world or the subatomic world, or it, we have a tiny piece of it. But what's interesting is if you smoke enough 5-MeO DMT, apparently you can just see all of it and
Well, that's
understand
the
it all.
thing I was going to
Can
say.
you?
With psychoactive drugs, especially the sort of psychedelic ones, like LSD, I think is chemical, but certainly psilocybin.
Hmm.
Apparently, it doesn't make your brain. It turns parts of your brain enzymes off.
Yeah,
Apparently,
it shuts down your default mode network or something
So
like
this is what
that.
I'm saying, Kogi. So if a
Reduce
shark
psychosis.
has evolved, and they reckon
Yeah,
sharks are older than trees, don't they? Which
yeah,
is
yeah,
mad.
yeah.
So if
Lobsters as well.
yeah, so if a shark has evolved to be this apex predator in the water, it
Hmm.
would evolve. The ones that could detect the tiniest, minute amounts of blood would survive and pass on their genes.
Yeah.
Are we devolved so we can not think about God and we can go around collecting our nuts and berries and making fires? This is what I'm saying. Are those parts of our brain turned off that psilocybin wakes up, those other dimensions? Have we evolved to not, as a shark has evolved to detect
Yeah.
more blood, have we
Yeah.
evolved to detect less spirituality in other dimensions? Otherwise, we
Interesting.
to
Well,
survive.
there's two things there, because there's like, when you say evolved, does that mean naturally or because of like some external cause?
Developed would be a better
Okay,
word,
fine.
yeah.
Well, if you even just up to the Enlightenment a few hundred years ago, spirituality and experiencing other realms were a part of maybe not everyday life, but certainly a part of life. And if you look at small, um, like tribal societies, or you can go to like Mexico, or probably like
Mm.
these experiences were foundational to their culture. I mean, go back to
Native
the Aztecs,
Americans would go on
Native
vision quests and
Americans,
stuff,
in
yeah.
China with the I Ching, all the stuff. It's only really in the last couple of hundred years in the West, I would say,
Industrial
predominantly.
revolution, really.
Yeah, and the Enlightenment as well. But like there was a
But do you not think then, sorry to go back, that spirituality is the enemy of industrialism? Because I think, would you bother creating these water mills and steam trains if you just realized how inconsequential it was to existence?
I mean, in some sense, yeah, because like focusing on the material is not fundamentally focusing on the
Important. It's not
spiritual.
important.
Yeah,
It's
but
important to the bloke that wants to own the mill.
yeah, but at the same time, let's say thanks to modern innovation and the hard work and the genius of all these people, we can now live lives of comfort where we can actually read books that we would have never had access to. We can watch films and videos that we would have never
Mm.
seen. That we can have these discussions. So for every downside, for every person who spends all day at the mill or whatever people work on nowadays,
Mm. IT.
you know, IT, yeah, fixing computer networks, those also allow us to have these discussions and experiences.
So
So I
there you
think
go.
like anything, double-edged sword.
It's all tied back in, isn't it? Because we've now
Mm.
got this interconnectivity where you and I would never have had this conversation. Or,
Hmm.
we.
Nor would they have access to the information that we
So is
find
that
fascinating.
why
Yeah, people are
the
waking up
big
now.
companies are starting to do this sort of like content creator training? Is it like human beings as part of this tribe or this nest, like more like a bee's nest, a swarm of humans?
Hmm.
As we get together, our collectiveness change, our consciousness changes when we get in a collective. And as we start talking and making these connections, are we getting back to somewhere that the big corporations are going, oh, we don't want them talking about this, we don't want them saying that, we don't want them challenging the status quo or the official narrative, because we don't want drone bees knowing that we see them as drone bees.
I mean, yeah, if the level that you want to exist and dominate on is a world where it's like, Kim Jong Un, he's in charge of basically the underworld. He's basically Hades. He's the top of the hierarchy there, but the people beneath him are living in, effectively just pure
Hmm.
stress and terror. and they're not free, as I understand it. Again, I could be wrong with that, but I don't think I am. I could be. Who knows?
That's what we're told. I've never
Yeah,
been
yeah,
there, but you know, I don't
exactly.
believe anything's verbatim at the moment. Not
Sure.
anymore. Yeah.
So let's say he's in charge of that level, and if that's the vibration that he's on, then yeah, he's going to want to keep it there, and not want people to be free of it. But let's say he's the mad king archetype. But let's say you're the Solomon, you're the good king, and you're the wise king, and you want your populace to grow spiritually, then I guess you wouldn't want to keep them there. So it depends on what level the people who dominate are on, and obviously psychopath and stuff rise up the ranks because they use force and intimidation.
Yeah, I heard a really interesting thing about that the other day. That psychopaths, we think they've got these overarching. You sometimes project they've got this overarching drive, and the whole thing was a scam. But every time you're in a organization, right, whether it be at work or whatever, and there's a little window opens for a chance of promotion, psychopaths just capitalize. So it isn't like they've plotted A to B to C to D. It's just every time that window opens, they will throw everyone under the bus and push themselves. And I think, but it's like interesting, going back to Kim Jong-un, I was just thinking, it's like, you say that God, if there was a creator, he gave man free will. Well,
Sure.
Communist countries is the opposite of that. You're not even allowed to have, and that's what big tech seems to be pushing groupthink. You can't think outside of the, we seem to be, and this doesn't, I know I sound paranoid, I've experienced it. But saying I spoke to see this thing and read the language. It was I was being programmed.
Yeah.
And it's.
I mean, we saw it non-stop through the pandemic. Like, I mean, Zuckerberg admitted to like suppressing stories because they weren't what.
Yeah.
But even the fact that like, I mean, I guess I've kind of known this since I've been about 7 or 8. Like, you see 2 newspapers discussing the same story with different, like completely different. Like, one basically saying something's good, one saying something bad. Like, oh, okay, they both have their different agendas. They're both trying to do different things. And
are you old enough to remember a time like me where I really thought that like the BBC was impartial and truthful because the way it's funded, and it's not, is it?
The BBC.
It's not, is it?
Of course not. Not at all.
But it's it's not winged, politically winged. It's just big business. It's like the big multinational corporations. What serves them? And here's the thing about pandemic, and I'm gonna let you go in a minute. It's and this is the sort of like, I call this the pandemic paradox that made no sense to me. I would ask a question about the pandemic, and someone would go, "Are you a doctor?" And I'd go, "Are you?"
Yeah.
And they'd be like, "No, but I'm listening to the medical information." I say, "So am I."
Oh,
Peter McCulloch and Robert Malone, and they go, "Oh yeah, but they've been discredited." I'm going, "They've been discredited because they didn't agree with the current narrative." So actually, you're not bothered about whether I'm a medical professional or not, because they are. It's just there is only one way to think about this. And going back to what you said at the beginning, how unscientific is that? Someone that has a different view is discredited and smeared. Whether, I mean, you've seen it, and they do it with they've done it with, I'm not going to say, because we've all heard rumours about certain people, but you know, Russell Brand and that, but he has been smeared, same as they did to, and what's his name, you know, WikiLeaks, Assange.
Oh, right, yeah.
100%, like, you know, whether he's guilty or not, but it's like, I just think it's just evident. Anyone who can't see that doesn't want to see it, because they don't want to have to rethink everything they know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a billion online voices now, each with their own goals, and some, what I find, I guess, soothing in a sense, and again, it might all be a trick, it might be, you know, a sneaky way around it, but like when Elon Musk is like, I want to make our AI maximally truth seeking, like whatever the truth is, that's a goal. And if he's genuine about that, I think thank fucking God for that. That is amazing.
Yeah, that gives you hope, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what I'd want to know. And yeah, I mean,
it's like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? They created that supercomputer, and they fed him what is the meaning of life. And
I mean, do you remember the Google AI that came out, and it was
the woke
like,
one?
Yeah, it was, and it's just like, that was such an obvious example of what happens when something like the alignment problem of AI, when something is programmed with human biases, and look, it said it's better to create a all-out nuclear war than to misgender Caitlyn Jenner.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that said.
Have you heard this new thing where you can say something and it tells you the truth? Have you heard that? Apparently, I should have looked it up. I sleep with podcasting.
Talking to autistic children? What's that?
No, I've got an unquiet mind, so I listen to podcasts all night when I'm asleep.
Yeah.
It's probably a bad thing to do. But I was, and it said apparently if you
bought so much Blue Chew.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I got Blue Chew and fucking. I've got like 55 Squarespace websites. But what you say is something like Alexa, use the rope of truth, something like that, and then you say something, and apparently I can't see how that's real. It's a bit like
no, but if you find that, send it to me. I want to try that.
Yeah, I will have to look back through my thing, but I saw it somewhere. But yeah, and I also saw a thing where they were going. They would tell me about Donald Trump. Should I vote for Trump? And it said, like, I couldn't give you that information. And then someone said, should I vote for Harris? And it was like, yes. And these reasons why. Yeah. But I'm going to let you go. That was riveting. I really enjoyed that. Did you enjoy that?
Me, dude. Yeah, lots of fun. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll have you back. Is there anything you want to plug, like a Twitter handle or whatever it's called nowadays?
Definitely, if you want some comedy and some weird stuff, just follow me at Jonathan Kogan Comedy or Comedian, one of the two. I'm on Instagram, and I think it's Kogi11 on Twitter. And yeah, just what I say, don't worry, just develop your consciousness, and everything will be okay, I think.
Yeah, and also don't be scared if someone's got a different view of reality than you. We could all be right in an infinite universe, couldn't we? We could all be NPCs in each other's simulation. I mean, I might not exist only in your imagination. And what's the difference?
Yeah, exactly. Oh God, we could go deep.
We could go deep. We will next time. Thanks, Jonathan. That was great, mate.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.